Hello, welcome back to the Adventures of Scotty Boy. This is Scotty Boy. For those of you that might have seen the first video, yikes. Be kind, it was my first one. I guess all in all, I thought it was pretty good. Although I think I might have inadvertently made a pretty good drinking game with it. So for those of you who might be on home time and not driving, if you want to play, go on back to my first video and drink every time you see, every time I say the word focus, lifestyle, or style. Holy crud. Anyway, like I said, this is a little harder than it looks. So bear with me. I'll get better with it. For this one, I really just want to get most of the intro stuff out of the way. The first one, I was just kind of talking about, what you can expect from the channel. This one, I want to, tell you a little bit about, my work history and background. And I also took some video of the area that I live in. I wouldn't normally do that, but I actually live in Virginia, in a pretty historical area, and it's a very small town, but there's some significance to it, and a little surprise for those of you that are either Marines or interested in military history. So stay tuned for that. Before I go to the intro and take on the rest of this, I wanted to just kind of give you an update on where I am in the process. I don't think I mentioned that in the first one. I'm scheduled right now. I'm scheduled to be at Springfield, Missouri on February 7th. So I would say, I think about 10 days ago, I had been in contact with Barbara Brown, by the way. Fantastic recruiter, and I'll put her information in the description below. But yeah, I've talked to her, I think 3 times over the last month or so, maybe a little longer, and things just really started rolling just recently, simply because I do have a trainer, and my trainer was not going to be available until the first week of February. So I actually put some of my plans on hold to get this trainer. It was just an opportunity I didn't want to pass up. And without, I'll go ahead and announce that. I had kind of given that as a teaser last time, but my trainer is actually none other than Eric from Driver Lineup. As soon as he's done with Captain Dave, I'll be jumping in the seat and starting my journey as well. So, I had spoken in Discord, gosh, probably 2 months ago, I'm thinking, something like that. I really had just started. I went into the introduce yourself chat room, gave a little bit of information, and boom, he kind of reached out to me, and we did some chatting and a phone call, and kind of thought this would be a pretty good fit. So it kind of was born then. But since it was so far in the future, I had to kind of hold off on the application process and all that, because those of you that don't know, the Prime application has a 30-day shelf life. Not that you can't do it again, but if you do your application and you're not to Prime within that 30 days, you kind of have to start that part over again. So I was just kind of holding off on that. So anyway, I've got my date tomorrow. I'm actually planning to go get my DOT physical and the drug screen, and then after that, I'm gonna try to get my permit done. So I can tell you, I have been studying that thing. I feel pretty confident, to be honest. I don't even think there's going to be nerves. I've been studying various apps, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a future video. I'll go through all of this step by step and at least give you the benefit of what helped me along the way. But yeah, I have been studying that for a while now, and feel pretty confident on the general knowledge exam, as well as all the different endorsements. So I'll let you know how that goes. But anyway, without further ado, I'll go ahead and switch to the intro, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, I just wanted to go into a little bit about myself. I was born and grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, till about 11 years old, and then I moved to this area. My parents live across the water from West Point, and that's where I grew up from 11 to college, and actually went back to Virginia Beach for college. I went to Virginia Wesleyan. I got a bachelor's in psychology. I didn't start in the field as soon as I got out of college. My family actually owned 2 Subway restaurants, so I actually was the general manager of Subway, 2 of these Subway restaurants, for about 8 years or so. I don't recommend it. Didn't like it at all. It just was not for me. But after that, I stepped into my field, into the psychology field. I worked with children with autism for a couple of years. I was a counselor in an autism school. That was absolutely fantastic. I loved that kind of work. After that, I worked with children with intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities. I worked in ran a weekend respite and a day program. And then from there, I went to work at what we call in Virginia community services boards. I think all states have them. I think they go by different names, but they're basically your local government, mental health, substance abuse, intellectual and developmental disability services, generally serving those on Medicaid, usually your lower income families, that kind of thing. So I did that for 15 years, kind of moved up the ranks in this agency. And my final job was Director of Quality Assurance on the leadership team. And not to go into too much detail on that, but basically I was in charge of making sure the whole agency kind of runs according to the law and regulations, human rights, HIPAA, that kind of thing. And I did that for about 6 years, and that's the job I just completed last Friday. So I just had my last day. I'm officially unemployed for at least about 3 weeks. So, and happy to be. I feel really good about coming to Springfield. I feel good about my decision. We'll see, and you'll be along for the ride. So that's where we are. The next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to show you where I lived. Like I mentioned in the intro, I don't know if this is going to be everybody's cup of tea, and I probably wouldn't have even done it if it weren't. I'm kind of proud of this area. I live very close to Williamsburg and Yorktown and Jamestown and Richmond, so I'm right kind of in that pocket of history, where in a lot of ways this nation was born. So my little town, though small, and most people probably hadn't even heard of it, it had some significant history to it. And anyway, it's just kind of an impromptu video. I'd been in Williamsburg. I upgraded my phone, and I'd gotten one of those cool YouTube handheld things. So I was like, turned to my wife. I was in the passenger seat. I was like, maybe we'll test this out. And I decided to go ahead and make a video where we just kind of roll through town. And as I've kind of hinted, there's a nice surprise at the end for anybody who is a Marine or interested in military history. And for those of you that have served, thank you for your service, and I hope you enjoy this. All right, bye-bye. All right, hello YouTube. This is an impromptu video. Wasn't really planning to do this, but I just got a new upgrade on my phone, and I also got a cool YouTuber handheld thing where I don't have to worry about holding the phone or getting my thumb in the way. Anyway, I thought I'd, by way of intro, thought it'd be easier to show you where I live than to just have myself talking to you about it. Anyway, we're coming in. I live in West Point, Virginia. It's roughly 20 to 30 minutes from Williamsburg, Yorktown, Jamestown, so it's a very historical area. And the town I live in is very small, but it also has some some interesting things that happened in history, and a couple historical characters that are pretty good. Now, I don't know if this is going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I will say that if you're a Marine or if you're interested in military history at all, you want to hang on. I got kind of a treat for you at the end of this. So, but for as far as where we are, it's kind of hard to see with the railing going, but to the right across there, that's West Point, Virginia. It's a peninsula. This is the York River, and right at West Point, it splits into two other rather large rivers. The York River is fed by the Chesapeake Bay. This river is the Pamunkey, and on the other side of West Point is the Mattaponi. Those are Chief Powhatan, the Powhatan Nation. Those are two tribes that were here. And of note, and we're going to go down Main Street of West Point so you get an idea, but early history of this place, Chief Powhatan had a brother that ran what, I don't know the word and what they would have called it, but basically it's the capital city of the Powhatan Nation. And I guess, by the way, this town now is pretty much driven by this paper mill over here. It's been a paper mill for many, many years, and that's kind of been the backbone of our economy here. But anyway, yeah, this long ago, this used to be the capital city called Sincotec. And like I said, Powhatan's brother ran it. Of note, also, Captain John Smith was brought here and was held captive for a while. And interestingly enough, he came back years later and actually tried to open up some trade with the Indians here. And as I said, we're pretty close to Jamestown. So this was actually a staging area for some of the assaults on Jamestown. So anyway, it's of note. But this part up here, I'm just going to show you. It's like many little towns you see along the East Coast and probably elsewhere. But it's just kind of a quaint little town with its usual main street. And I thought I'd show you that. Now, I'm not going to be specific about where I live. But I know my camera's doing something weird, but hopefully it's working. Anyway, also of note, there was a signer of the Declaration of Independence that lived up here on the left. It's not here anymore, but I can kind of show you the rough area where he lived. And then I'll get to the military, a couple other things, and then the special treat for any Marines or people that are into military history. But it's right here where this corner is. This is where Carter Braxton, he was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Those, of course, weren't there then, and he had like a little plantation house there. All right. And from what I understand, he only lived there for about 10 years. From what I think, what I heard, I think what I read on him was that he lived in Richmond, but he was having, I think his house burned or something like that, and he temporarily stayed here for, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, and then moved back. But anyway, we can boast that we had a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Now, my wife's going to turn here in just a second on 2nd Street. And there's a couple little things to talk about there, and then the big surprise for those Marines out there. Now, also, you may have remembered Bacon's Rebellion from when you were learning history in school. A lot of that rebellion happened in a little bit further, the other way up inland from here. But Nathaniel Bacon's top commanders were captured, and they were brought here. And right here on 2nd Street, stop right there for a second. I haven't heard from anybody exactly where. Let me go ahead and turn. I think it was up here. Most people seem to think it was over here. Oh, sorry, I was just waiting for a car. Somewhere around where this old house is. They believe it was near the water, but anyway, his commanders were brought here on 2nd Street, and they were hung. So that's Bacon's Rebellion. I'm not going to go into a history lesson on that, basically because I'm not qualified to do so, to be quite honest. All right, now we're turning on 1st Street here, and here comes what I think is the coolest thing about where I live, to be honest. All right, we're coming up on this house here with the dumpster in front. This house here, if you can stop just for a second, anybody behind us? This is the birthplace of Chesty Puller. And for those of you who do not know, he is the most decorated Marine in U.S. history. And he was born here. Okay, you can go ahead. And he was born here, and he lived out his days later in life in a town just up the road from here, about 20 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and go up there, and I'll show you that one too. But he had a house in Saluda, Virginia, where he lived with his wife. And if you go on Google and you Google Chesty Puller's house, you're usually going to get that one. I haven't seen this one that I just showed you on there, but what you'll see is either he and his wife out front. A lot of the pictures have big groups of Marines who kind of take a pilgrimage to go to there and his gravesite. And that'll be the next thing I'll show you. I'll go up to Saluda, show you where he also lived later in life, and I'll show you his gravestone. So hopefully you'll find that interesting. All right, see ya. All right, this is the town of Saluda, So about 20 minutes up the road from West Point where I live. And I'm going to show you the house Chesty Puller and his wife lived their remaining years. It's up here on the right. Not quite yet. Yeah, it's coming up a little bit. Again, I'm not driving, my wife is. So. Here we go. So, this white house right here. That's where Chesty Puller lived the remaining of his days. If you look it up online, Chesty Puller and house, you'll see a whole bunch of pictures. A lot of them will have groups of Marines posing on the front steps, which is kind of neat. The next thing I plan to show you is his gravesite, so stay tuned. And here is his final resting place. And this is actually on the campus of what's called Christ Church Academy in Saluda, Virginia. And the highway out there is actually General Puller Highway. And this is only about a mile from the house I showed you earlier, where he lived out the rest of his days. So there you go. Chesty Puller.